Joining me now is Afghanistan veteran, pilot in the Air National Guard, and Republican Congressman from Illinois, Adam Kinzinger. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. I want to start with Afghanistan. Over the past 2 decades, hundreds of thousands of American service members, including yourself, deployed to Afghanistan. 2,448 American service members and DoD employees lost their lives to this war, along with nearly 4,000 private contractors and untold numbers of Afghan civilians. Tens of thousands of Americans have suffered physical and emotional wounds. As the U.S. leaves, I guess the big question is, was it all worth it?
Well, look, Jake, and you're, I guess, following in the outpost of that real kind of human story that happened there. I very much appreciate, I think it put a real life to the people that fought in Afghanistan. Look, I think if we could go back to 2001, if we could use our magic wand, I would fight the war very differently. I'd make sure that the Taliban would be kicked out. I think, you engage in building or protecting Afghanistan in a far different way than we did. But, without having the benefit of hindsight, I think we're going to get an answer to that question soon. Because I think if Afghanistan, as it unfortunately appears is going to happen, if the government collapses, Kabul falls, we see the horrible pictures, we see the rise of the Taliban again, and we see a safe haven for terrorists to train, we might realize that Afghanistan, though not fun for us and though it was a big sacrifice, was certainly worth not having that be a safe haven. I hope I'm wrong, but we might see that.
As you know, NATO's combat mission formally ended all the way back in 2014, although obviously the U.S. and NATO allies stayed there for other purposes, including training. 7 years later, U.S. troops still there. Here's what President Biden had to say about that in his speech a few days ago.
Nearly 20 years of experience has shown us that the current security situation only confirms that just one more year of fighting in Afghanistan is not a solution, but a recipe for being there indefinitely.
So then Biden turned and asked critics of his, and I will put it to you, how many thousands more American daughters and sons are you willing to risk, and how long would you have them stay? I know these are tough questions, but what would your answer be?
And I think it's a really kind of unfair question for the president to have posed because, look, there's never anything that feels worth, sacrificing American lives for, but that's what leadership is about. Leadership is recognizing that, yes, you can't ask the American people, do you want to sacrifice, your sons and daughters? Of course they're going to say no, but leadership is leading people to say, look, I have the foresight of knowing, though, however, that without that sacrifice, it's actually going to cost your sons and daughters' lives potentially here at home. And I think the tragedy of Afghanistan, look, President Trump basically put President Biden in the situation where he would either have to increase the numbers in Afghanistan or bring them all home. President Biden went in there, and basically we get asked all the time, what was the mission in Afghanistan? Well, the mission was to create an Afghan government that can defend itself. They were pretty close to that. The U.S. and NATO was only carrying out 2% of combat missions. Most of those were targeting ISIS. The rest was stiffening the spine of the Afghan government that was willing to fight as long as they knew the U.S. had their back. And now you're seeing this collapse, not because they weren't heroic in fighting, but because everybody turned their back on it. Again, Jake, I hope I'm wrong. I hope, with all the troops home, we realize we should have left years ago and Afghanistan can defend itself and women are treated well. I just don't see that happening, and unfortunately a lot quicker than we thought.
President Biden says that his administration is going to begin evacuating some of the roughly 18,000 Afghan translators and others who worked with the U.S. military, NATO forces, along with their families. But the plan right now is to send them to these neutral third countries, not to the United States, not to Guam, which has been proposed, while the applications are being processed. Do you think the Biden administration is doing enough to save these people?
Well, I think they've stepped it up in recent days. I don't think they had a plan when this announcement was made. I think this announcement actually surprised a lot of the administration, the announcement to leave Afghanistan. There's problems with bringing them to U.S. territories in terms of having constitutional protections if they're found out maybe that they weren't fully vetted correctly. But this has to be our number one priority. And the problem right now, Jake, we can have a neighboring country or any other country say, sure, we'll take them. Now we have to evacuate 18,000 people out of a country that is 80-some% possibly controlled by the Taliban now, in which people, no matter what district they live in, are unable to cross districts and travel to the airport to get out. I mean, I think it's great in theory, and I hope we can do it. I just logistically don't think it's possible at this moment, and it's going to be a massive tragedy. And this is going to affect, it's not just going to be a tragedy watching these translators that gave their lives for our country be killed. It's also going to be a tragedy in the next war whenever that happens, and we have to convince the locals to be on our side.
Let's turn to domestic politics. A number of your Republican colleagues are expressing outrage over President Biden's call for door-to-door outreach to encourage Americans to get vaccinated. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene compared those going door-to-door to Nazi brown shirts. Congresswoman Lauren Boebert called them needle Nazis. Senator Ted Cruz said it sounds to him like Soviet Russia. What's your response to all that?
Jake, it's insanity. It's absolute insanity. Now, what President Biden said, maybe he could have said it slightly differently, is we're willing to come to your house to give you the vaccine. At no point was anybody saying they're going to break down your door and jam a vaccine in your arm despite your protests. This is outrage politics that is being played by my party, and it's going to get Americans killed. We are on our party has been hijacked. My party has been hijacked. It is on its way to the ground, and for some people, it's a fun ride, right? We can put out this outrageous stuff on Twitter. Yeah, I'm getting all these retweets, and everybody knows me, I'm famous, but this plane is going to crash into the ground. Listen, if you are a Republican voter, do not listen to people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. The vaccine is safe. COVID is real. Get vaccinated, because if you're going to listen to the outrage, by the way, in March, she's bragging about Donald Trump creating the vaccine, and now she's saying basically the vaccine's going to kill you. I call on Leader McCarthy, I call on every leader in the Republican Party to stand up, say get vaccinated, and to call out these garbage politicians, these absolute clown politicians playing on your vaccine fears for their own selfish gain.
And I know you're vaccinated, I'm vaccinated. The vaccine is the best protection there is against the deadly pandemic. Thank you so much, Congressman Kinzinger.